Could Darth Plagueis the Wise do the seemingly impossible? Could he heal the wounds of Lord Vader? Greetings, Acolytes of the Force, and welcome back to the Archives. The first Sith Lord to have found the secret to manipulating the midichlorians, Plagueis, was a man whose work is largely misunderstood and shrouded in great mystery and darkness. His ability to create life through mastering the midichlorians was something that we have never seen before. It was Plagueis' goal to achieve immortality through this process, thereby eschewing the need for essence transfer, or horrific rituals that would leave one in a state of agony. On the road to eternal life, Plagueis would find that many things could be done when influencing the midichlorians. Namely, Darth Plagueis learned the ability to replicate life itself and to heal brutal grave injuries. This naturally led us to wonder if it was entirely possible that had Plagueis been alive, would he have been able to restore Anakin after his burning on Mustafar? To do this, we quickly got to work on our research, looking up the scientific breakthroughs of Darth Plagueis in depth to see what he could have accomplished. And after searching, it is our belief that Plagueis would have been able to save Vader from his black armored fate. So join us today as we open a holocron and dig through the research journal of Darth Plagueis and explain exactly why and how he would have saved Vader in a way that Sidious never could have. As we know, the diagnosis of the Chosen One's fate was very problematic, having now all 4 of his limbs severed and sustained burns down to his organs. So much living tissue of Anakin's body had been utterly destroyed. Because midichlorians inhabit living cells, when a sufficient amount of those cells are irretrievably lost, it will cut the user's force potential down a few notches. Typically, a limb or a hand severed here or there doesn't cause too much of a drop in potential, since the count is insignificant. But in Anakin Skywalker's case, when that much organic tissue was lost, first his limbs, then the burning of his tissue, this resulted in a dramatic loss in midichlorians and thus potential. As it was stated, Anakin should have been able to become the most powerful Force wielder in history, but he was cut down to merely 80% of not his own power, but Palpatine's. While Sidious himself insisted that Vader's power blockages were mostly that of mental, we know that even if Vader were to bypass his emotional barriers, he would still never have the power that he should have had. And that's all thanks to Darth Sidious's mismanagement of Vader's treatment. Despite having all of the Darth Plagueis research notes, Sidious admitted that he didn't understand his master's work, and evidently never took the time to attempt to learn it. Plagueis had nearly mastered the way of influencing the midichlorians, successfully recreating life, and coming within a breath of achieving the immortality that all Sith desired. But Sidious never replicated his master's experiments, and didn't much care for the idea of manipulating the midichlorians. Instead, Sidious would use the research to fuel experiments in creating mutants and monsters, but nothing else. This turned out to be a massive mistake and a massive waste, as Plagueis' research could have saved the power of the Chosen One had Palpatine tried, and there was great power there that Palpatine never learned. Let's assume for a moment that Plagueis made it to the events of Revenge of the Sith. We won't go into too much detail about a what-if scenario, as this video is not meant to be a fanfiction, but more so an exploration on this specific moment in history. Plagueis had a very different idea for how he was going to build his Sith Empire, and because of this, he would have managed the Clone Wars very differently. Let's say for a moment that Sidious didn't kill his master, but instead decided to imprison him, only bringing him out whenever it suited the Dark Lord's purposes. Everything goes as it normally would until we get to the Duel of Mustafar. Instead of flying Vader back to Coruscant where he would be mutilated further by machines and outdated technology, Sidious takes him to a secret Sith world where Plagueis is being held prisoner. Palpatine orders his former master to heal Vader, or else. So, from what we've learned, how does Plagueis do it? Looking into his research notes from his journal, we have discovered a certain section, one that convinces us beyond a shadow of a doubt that the Sith scientist has this taken care of, and has this mastered. Plagueis had originally tried the idea of a blood transfusion, but found the host's body native midichlorians that rejected the influx of foreign cells. His natural solution was not to introduce new midichlorians, but to impose his will on the midichlorians already present within any given subject. It would take incredible mental acuity, but Plagueis would succeed in the process of using the Force on a microscopic level. This is possible, as many Jedi Masters and Sith Lords had the ability to do the same, doing so in order to create holocrons. Those subatomic nudges in the Force are possible with extreme focus. Plagueis had achieved this focus by practicing on rodents and other small creatures with a basic amount of midichlorians, and he had found this process difficult at first, stating that his own native midichlorians were rejecting his attempts to force them into imposing their fellows, due to the fact that all midichlorians are linked by a universal mind. Plagueis' midichlorians turned against those of the small creatures. However, his will would soon supersede theirs, and he would successfully manipulate any given subject. Let's read now from what Plagueis says in his notes. Eventually I succeeded, first with small creatures, then with slaves purchased from the huts. I forced the midichlorians to override their natural life cycles. What I discovered is that these midichlorians could not die. Instead, they drew upon sustaining force energy, which acted on a microscopic level to halt tissue decay in their hosts, putting an end to aging and disease. With this knowledge, Plagueis would have been able to save Vader from dying, and even halted the destruction process of his body so it wouldn't get any worse. Later in Plagueis' notes though, the Sith scientists admittedly had trouble when it came to replicating the midichlorians. He had done it a few times with non-force sensitive subjects, but the results were catastrophic. The midichlorians had multiplied uncontrollably, and thus resulted in the death of the hosts. However, we know that in Darth Plagueis' novel, he had successfully done this with another Sith in Darth Venomous, as Plagueis was able to bring Venomous back to life over and over again at will. Plagueis was able to do it without trying, to the point where he was just having fun with it. With this knowledge, Plagueis would have easily been able to influence the midichlorians of Anakin's body to flood over the damaged tissue, restoring it all from the burns. It would likely be a grisly process, with Anakin's life hanging by a thread, but Plagueis could have done it. This would restore the damaged tissue, and not only his flesh, but his lungs as well, negating the need for a respirator, life support system, and a helmet, as this process would also likely restore Anakin's eyes, ears, and his vocal cords. It's possible that he might even be able to grow his hair back. But on the subject of Anakin's limbs, this is a little bit of a different story. Plagueis would not be able just to have Anakin regenerate his legs and arms. That would likely require a transfusion, which would be much more difficult, as the natural solution, of course, is cloning his limbs. In a holocron we released a few days ago though, we talked about why Vader didn't clone his limbs, with the reason largely being the fact that cloning force-sensitive tissue was extremely difficult. There was a risk in the limbs being unstable and not working with the Force properly due to how the midichlorians would act differently. However, only with Imperial science did Darth Vader find these weaknesses, not Darth Plagueis' eyes. With Plagueis, all of that worry is thrown out the window. The Sith was a mad scientist fully aware of the midichlorians' resistance to replication, and this is why we believe Plagueis would be able to use his abilities in tandem with the cloning process to ensure that the midichlorians obeyed and replicated properly. Then, he could surgically graft the limbs back onto Anakin's body, causing the cells to properly mend with one another to feel just as natural. We even believed that he could restore Anakin's right hand. But now, my friends, this is why we believe Plagueis could have completely restored Vader's body and his Force potential. It would have been long and grueling, but from the research notes of Darth Plagueis and the Darth Plagueis novel, we believe it to be more than possible. Something compelling though, is even though Vader would no longer have a suit, this process would be traumatic, and Vader could likely still pull upon that pain. Perhaps even Plagueis could offer Vader something else, perhaps attempting to bring Padme back as well. But that is a story for another day. As always, my friends, thank you so much for visiting the channel today. If you've been enjoying the content, it would help us out more than you know if you could leave a like, and as always, may the Force be with you.